Why is Vedic chanting restricted for women? To approach this question, we must first understand the foundations of Ayurveda, the ancient medical system that shaped health and social practices in Bharat until the 18th century and whose influence continues to inform cultural traditions today. In Ayurveda, the five Vayus are described as vital currents moving in different directions. Pranavayu moves inward and upward, governing inhalation and sensory intake. Apanavayu moves downward and elimination. Samanavayu moves inward toward the navel, aiding digestion and assimilation. Vyanavayu circulates outward, distributing nutrients and energy throughout the body. Udanavayu moves upward, governing speech, chanting, and spiritual ascent. Each has its own domain, and balance among them is essential for health. For women, the Apanavayu, which moves downwards, controls menstruation, ovulation, and childbirth, etc. When women chant Vedic mantras, the act strongly stimulates Udanavayu through controlled breath and vocal exertion. This upward pull can counteract the natural downward movement of Apanavayu. Ayurveda emphasizes that Apana must remain stable for reproductive health, menstrual regularity, and smooth childbirth. If Udana dominates excessively, which means an upward pull due to Vedic chanting, then the downward functions may be disturbed, leading to imbalance in the female system. The possible ailments described in Ayurvedic reasoning include menstrual irregularities, painful cycles, or disturbed flow due to weakened apana. Reproductive strains such as difficulty in conception or complications during pregnancy may arise if downward energy is disrupted. Although these reasons have not been tested or validated in modern clinical laboratories, the idea should be understood within its ancient Ayurvedic and cultural context. Hence, rishis encouraged women to engage in alternative devotional practices such as short slokas, musical recitation, and arts, which harmonize breath and emotion without prolonged upward exertion. This was not exclusion but an adaptive design. Spirituality was embedded into women's daily life and creative expression, ensuring inclusiveness while safeguarding physiological balance. Thus, from an Ayurvedic perspective, the restriction was an emergent cultural adaptation to protect Apanavayu and overall health. Then, how did Brahmavadinis manage to chant Vedic mantras in early Vedic period? Brahmavadinis were exceptional women who studied and even contributed to the Vedas. Names like Lobamudra and Kargi are remembered in tradition. They represent an exception born of lifestyle choice and spiritual discipline. The general restriction on women chanting was an arrived cultural adaptation to protect those engaged in family life with a normal lifestyle where pregnancy, childbirth, and childcare placed heavy demands on Apanavayu, the downward energy governing reproductive health. Brahmavadinis, however, lived differently. They often chose ascetic lives in Gurukulas, maintaining strict routines of diet, celibacy, and discipline. By avoiding continuous reproductive cycles, they minimized strain on Apanavayu and could safely cultivate Udanavayu, the upward energy of speech and chanting. Texts suggest they followed protective regimens, controlled diet, ahara, daily purification, saucha, and breath discipline, pranayama, which balanced the vayus and safeguarded against ailments like menstrual irregularities, pelvic disorders, or depletion of ojas. Thus, Ayurveda does not exclude women from Vedic chanting. It simply requires that if women wish to chant, they must adopt the disciplined lifestyle of Brahmavadinis to safeguard health and maintain balance. The restriction was not inequality but an emergent cultural adaptation rooted in physiology and inclusiveness. Also, in ancient Bharat, between 500 BCE and 500 CE, life expectancy was only 35 to 45 years and child mortality was nearly 30 to 40%. Families often had 8 to 10 children, knowing that famine, drought, and disease could claim nearly half. Because of this uncertainty, men and women were never sure how many children would survive. So, having 8 to 10 was seen as a personal, family, and social necessity of those days. As a result, women spent most of their prime years in pregnancy and childcare, which naturally weakened their health. The rishis, observing this through, recognized that women's bodies carried heavier biological burdens than men. This was not a matter of fault, but of reality. No one can be blamed for this. Understanding the realities of that time, our ancestors discouraged women from Vedic chanting, yajnas, and homas, recognizing that these could become an additional burden because of the fact that the female body has additional biological functions compared to the male body. They saw that women's health was already strained by repeated childbirth and childcare, and therefore guided them toward devotional practices more over karmic practices suited to their circumstances. While men could dedicate 12 years to Vedic study and daily yajnas, women were guided toward bhakti, that is devotion, expressed through arts, music, dance, and household dharma to suit their interest. Importantly, we must not compare modern women of the 21st century with those who lived 2500 years ago. To understand why Ayurveda said what it did, one must time travel back into that world, see the short life expectancy, the high child mortality, and the fragile health conditions. Only then does it become clear family and social need made women's dharma center on nurturing, while men's dharma leaned towards karmic ritual.